Public servants to get a wage freeze. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Got my stein of coffee that I'm still working through. I thought we'd have a look at this ABC News article discussing the wage freeze for public servants that Labor's going to implement here in Queensland. Now, during the economic lockdowns, a lot of public servants here in Queensland were potentially going to receive a pay rise. One that they'd already pre-negotiated, mind you, but the optics looked utterly horrific. And this is after they already received a $1,000 cash handout just because, and all of our costs and living expenses were driven up because licensing costs went up, and I think rego went up as well. There you go. And remember, Queensland is in a huge amount of debt. It's a huge amount of debt. They're borrowing to pay for these perks. So I guess, you got to jump on that gravy train, boys. Get on there. Get in the public service. If you can put up with the PC rubbish, go and do it. So let's have a look. A forced wage freeze ahead for Queensland public servants as Labor government plans to introduce extraordinary legislation. So maybe the public servant might actually line up with some of the other parts of the economy. You can see here, this is just the wage price index, public versus private. Look at the private sector. Look at their wage growth compared to the public sector in red. You can see it in the chart there. I wonder why. I wonder why there's a difference. Really is a privileged position in some ways, isn't it? Quite protected. It's a different world. Frustrated by failed talks with unions, Industrial Relations Minister Grace is set to pull the trigger on extraordinary legislation to enforce the Premier's promise of a 12-month wage freeze for the Queensland Public Service. The ABC understands the former union boss will take the matter to Cabinet on Monday, with plans to introduce a bill to Queensland Parliament in the next sitting, which begins on June 16. It has appalled key unions, including the Australian Workers' Union, the Queensland Police Union, whose members had agreements in place for a 2.5% pay rise. Well, tough boys, tough lads. And women, tough everyone. This is what happens when you shut down the entire economy. The state is going into debt. Your citizens can't work. You're servants of those citizens. You've got to feel the pain. Sorry. QPU President Ian Levers said the state's police had a legally binding enterprise bargaining agreement that clearly sets out the wages and increases, with the next one due in 3 weeks' time on July 1. We expect the state government to honour this legally binding wage increase with police as we consider any type of retrospective legislation to nullify our employment agreement to be a troubling precedent that would effectively mean the end of enterprise bargaining as we know it, he said. Well, businesses have been forced to shut down. People have lost their entire income. The state has used the violence and threat of your police to enforce that. These are the people that you steal money from every day to pay for your enforcement. So maybe a 2.5%, a 2.5% rise can be put off for 6 months or a year. Maybe. Is that asking too much? And they're punished by a way. Come on, this can't be realistic. These people cannot be that removed from the struggles that the average person is having, that people in business are facing, that workers are facing. They cannot be that removed from that, could they? Could they be that isolated? This just seems ludicrous that they're saying this. Sure, it's an agreement, but there should be some give and take. The union should have gone to their members, okay, we need to do something, we need to improve our optics on this situation here. We're going to look terrible. We're going to look like a bunch of spoiled brats. Let's come to the government. Let's put it on the table. Okay, we'll only take a 0.5% and then bring the 2% in 6 months' time. You can cop it. That would be smart. That would win political support and popular support for this movement. But more and more, look at just the demographics of some of the union membership, guys. Most of it's middle-aged women in the public service. So pushed up by a wage freeze. Punished by a wage freeze, sorry. AWU State Secretary Steve Baker, who represents health workers, including cleaners, kitchen staff, and gardeners who work at health facilities, as well as allied health professionals, said it betrayed the work done during the pandemic crisis. They've been risking exposure to the pandemic, they've been hailed as heroes, and now they've been punished by a wage freeze. A wage freeze doesn't work. It doesn't stimulate the economy. It doesn't stimulate spending. They should be putting money into the economy. You should not be able to legislate to unpick agreements once they're created. It's retrospective legislation which the AWU will never support. Well, yeah, that's true. It's unfair. What they're doing is unfair, but it's what you experience in business, guys. The unions going on strike, refusing to work, using militant violence to get their ways. I mean, is that fair too? Boral having issues with all of their, concrete getting on site in Victoria, where the court has agreed that the unions are in breach. You're still doing it. Is that fair? Life ain't fair, guys. Other unions have swung behind Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk, including the powerful head of the United Workers Union, Gary Bullock. We are happy. Are we happy about the threat of legislation? No. Is the Premier happy about having to do it? No, Mr. Bullock said. But what our members do understand is that they are in a situation where they are still employed, while many other Queenslanders are unemployed. Yes, exactly. He understands. He appreciates the optics of this. They've still got a job. Some people don't. I mean, come on. This isn't that complicated, guys. Surely they're taking these other people out of context. You can't be this stupid, can you? There's a range of unions that totally understand the financial situation of the state in Queensland. Well, yes, there should be no pay rises for civil servants in Queensland until the state gets out of debt. How about that? Because the state is borrowing money, it's indebting future generations of citizens to pay that debt one way or another, to reduce our cost of living, our quality of life, for these perks, these privileges. And but Florian, it's unfair to the workers. Well, yeah, it is. They're paying it too. Maybe we should cut some of the services that we have here. Cut some of the workers, or the state needs to get a bit smarter with its money. Members of the United Workers Union have been consulted about what are the components of what a wage freeze might look like, and they think they'll be able to live with it. The ABC understands unions have been offered a sweetener to accept the 1-year freeze. In return, they will get a double-tap increase the following year, increases of 2.5% each 6 months. Oh, there you go. There you go. So while the government could book an estimated saving of $500 million ahead of the state election in October, the state would face wage increases of 5% the following year. So this is utter, it really is BS, isn't it? So a good Labor leader is pushing the problem on to the next election. Bloody hell. Terrible. Just terrible. The ABC put questions to the Industrial Relations Minister and the Treasurer about the prospect of legislation, whether the freeze applied to government-owned corporations and whether bonuses would continue to be paid to senior executives. The spokesman said the implementation of wage freezes is currently under consideration. I mean, this is ludicrous. They're just going to push it on to the next election. Here's the other question. Should civil servants still actually be allowed to vote in the state election? Because there's a conflict of interest, because they'll vote for the organization that still pays them the most. And then if you look at how many people are actually paid by the government, it just shows you. So, this socialistic... This is where I'm saying there's very little political will in Australia to have a more free market approach to things. Because too many people are working for the state, guys. One way or another. So it's a strange and seemingly contradictory position. It is a political minefield that New South Wales government is also trying to negotiate. The coalition government, led by Liberal Premier Gladys Berejiklian, I buggered it up, is proposing to honour all existing agreements and impose a 0% rise for the first 12 months of future agreements. It would save $3 billion, and instead of legislation only requires a change in regulation. But this week it was blocked by a disallowance motion from the New South Wales Upper House. The Labor opposition teamed up with the Greens, Animal Justice, One Nation and the Shooters and Fishers Party to thwart the New South Wales Treasurer's regulation. It's now been sent off to the New South Wales Industrial Relations Commission to resolve. It leaves key actors in two states in strange and seemingly contradictory positions. The Labour government in Queensland is pushing a wage freeze, while the Labour opposition in New South Wales is doing everything it can to block a similar move there. Well, I mean, it's just politics, guys. It's just politics. They just want to attack their opponents one way or another. The LNP, rather than adopt the New South Wales Coalition's idea of honouring existing contracts and imposing a freeze thereafter, is supporting the blanket freeze proposed by Ms Palaszczuk. There are also unions in Queensland willing to accept a freeze, while their New South Wales cousins are campaigning against the coalition proposal. And to top it all off, all sides are using the economic crisis as a way to justify their position. What do you think, everyone? It seems like a horrific mess. And really, I mean, if we're going to be paying it anyway after the election, does it matter? Does it really matter? It's just, Labor's just doing it for political purposes. I appreciate the union that understands the optics of it, but it just seems pointless if you're going to be paying more in 6 months' time. It seems utterly pointless, or after the next election. You know, just keep going with it then. It doesn't matter. It's already legislated. Be less of a pain than paying double later. What do you think, everyone? What are your opinions on it? Do you think they should receive their payment? Or is the wage freeze just a bit of a joke? Or should it just be limited to those above a certain wage bracket? As always, please let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I produce here, there are a few ways you can. You can join the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us via our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay, or Independent Reserve and Kucoin. You can buy our merch from HeiseSays. You can support us via Patreon or PayPal. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time.